Well, a good Monday morning to those of you fellow conservatives in McLendon Chisholm. I'm Robert Steinhagen. It's great to have you back with us today. And today we're going to be focusing on one of the hot topics of last year. That is the McLendon Chisholm Volunteer Fire Department. We're going to be focusing on, I'm going to be focusing on two things. One is the fraud that I believe was occurring in the MCVFD, and the other is how we got where we were and in the negotiations with the fire department. And so I think it's important that as conservatives you understand what was really going on back then, and that you really understand and have an appreciation for some of the challenges that we were facing as a group, as a council, and as a city. So that's very important for you to understand. I think that you'll definitely want to stay tuned and understand and see all of the things that I have to present to you today. And so one of the things that I want to speak to is what I believe was absolute fraud by the MCVFD, specifically the fire chief, and what I think that the evidence shows is that this was tens of thousands of taxpayer dollars being funneled to the fire chief, and that the treasurer of the MCVFD, Herman Larkin, was complicit in this. And I want to explain and explain why I believe that, and why I believe I can prove that it is absolutely true. Why the evidence, I believe, proves that what I'm saying is true. And it really goes back to the funding of grants for the MCVFD for years. The MCVFD had been applying for grants with the state of Texas through the Texas A&M through the Texas A&M Forest Service, and this organization is one that really has basically what happens is the state legislature grants money to the Forest Service, and basically so that the Forest Service can provide funding to different volunteer fire departments throughout the state of Texas. And if you're not aware, 70%, well over 70% of fire departments, I believe it's 77% in the state of fire departments in the state of Texas are all volunteer. And so most of these fire departments are in need of help and are in need of service, and so the Texas legislature appoints some money to go to the Texas A&M Forest Service and for that specific purpose. And so what happens is the Forestry Service provides, and let me show you a copy. Let me show you this online. This is their website, Texas A&M Forest Service, and what they do is this allows organizations, fire departments, to come in and apply for different kinds of grants. The grants are fairly straightforward. How you can be eligible to receive a grant. And let me just show you and click on one of these grant applications. You can see this is for equipment grants. So if you notice the information that is being asked on this application is fairly benign. They're asking for simple information. It doesn't take a rocket science, obviously, to fill this in, and that's the important thing about this is that it doesn't take a great deal of expertise to fill in one of these grants. And the MCVFD had been receiving grants successfully from the Texas A&M Forestry Service for years before. And in fact, on the Citizens for Representative Government website, and I'll show you this. I have actually. If you go to the Citizens for Representative Government website, and there's a posting that reads, "Follow the money. MCVFD uses taxpayer-funded grants to line personal pockets," and that will take you to this site, to this posting right here. This is a comprehensive, detailed explanation of what I'm about to share with you in a more compact way. But this will show you what you need to know about the different grants and things that were requested. I've included a link to view the grant requests and payouts to the MCVFD from the Texas A&M Forestry Service in the years prior to the contract with the so-called grant writer, and so that you can see for yourself that this is something that the MCVFD had been doing for years. And so they really didn't need a grant writer, but they hired one. And this grant writer happened to be the brother of the fire chief, and or at that time he was still the fire captain, but he was about to become fire chief because the previous fire chief was retiring. And he was a previous full-time fire chief, I should add to that. So this is the actual contract with the MCVFD. It was signed on 2012 by Captain Robert Jones and Chief Williams. And there you see it's a funded grant fee. The grant writer will receive 10% of the total grant amount funded to the agency. So an award of $12,000 would lead to a compensation of $1,200, which again is problematic. So little backstory. I am a professional grant writer. That's what, excuse me, a professional fundraiser, not a professional grant writer. By profession. This is how I make my money. I work with Christ-centered organizations, helping them to raise large dollars from high-capacity individuals, and have been doing this for about 18 years. And this is something that's very much in my wheelhouse. I have served many clients, and actually I have my own consulting firm, and I have someone who works with me who is her job is as a grant writer. I've worked with her for 13 years, and she helps with my clients when my clients. I have a client that is a possible candidate for grants. Now, what's important here is, why do you hire a grant writer? You hire a grant writer for a couple of reasons. The first reason, and this is key, is the grant writer is going to be able to identify organizations and granting institutions that can provide your organization with grants from organizations, from funding sources like state agencies, private foundations, and the like. And that will match the organization. And the key here is to understand that a very small amount of funding for not-for-profits in America come from grants. So we often in the fundraising circles that I run in, we call them big loud gifts, because typically a grant will be a large gift, and it's typically a one-time offer. And so a lot of people think, they think the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation or the Lilly Foundation. These are some very big granting organizations, foundations that give a lot of money away. But just because they give money away doesn't mean that they'll give to your organization. You have to meet their criteria for giving. And so a grant writer, a professional grant writer, has access to a foundation directory, and can identify, first of all, the granting institutions that will give to an organization like yours. So they'll look at all the parameters. So actually the first thing the grant writer will do is evaluate your organization and determine all of the things that are typical in granting requests or in applications that will qualify you for certain things. And then they will go and they will find these granting institutions that meet the criteria. That's the first thing. The second thing they will do is then take a deeper dive and evaluate very carefully how likely you are to get the grant. So with my clients, and one of the arguments that Chief Jones made to me when I first met him and Treasurer Herman Larkin and when I confronted them about this grant issue is hiring a grant writer on a percentage basis. At that time, I didn't know it was the fire chief's brother. I just thought they were being foolish and hiring a grant writer on a percentage basis. His point was that if you don't hire on a percentage basis, then you are not going to, I mean, you're going to have to pay out a lot of money, and there's no guarantees that come along with it. And if you don't have any guarantees, well, you pay out a lot of money. And that's true. That is absolutely true. I'm just getting some notes here about this show, just in case. Okay, and so there's an echo I'm hearing on here. So let me turn down the reverb. There we go. I hope that helps. Send me a text whether or not that did the trick. Okay. So hiring a grant writer, why you do it? They're going to identify those organizations. They're going to do the deep dive. They're going to tell you whether or not you match the criteria of the organization. They then do a real hard look. And like I said, the fire chief said to me, and rightly so, that you pay out a lot of money. To give you an example, he's absolutely right. If you, in that regard, that if you hire a grant writer and they charge on a fee basis, which all ethical fundraisers do, by the way. Just so you know, this grant writer, this so-called grant writer, is not a member of the Association of Fundraising Professionals. He's not a certified fundraising executive, as I am. He has no criteria, no credentials whatsoever to call himself a professional fundraiser. In fact, it is my understanding, based upon what I can find, he has never written a grant as a consultant to any organization on behalf of any organization except for the MCVFD. And like I said, as a consultant, he's got his master's, so I'm wondering perhaps maybe he participated in writing a grant for maybe his college or something like that. But that's not as a consultant. He's not getting compensated as a consultant for that. He's part of that process. So as a consultant, this so-called grant writer is not. It's not doing what they is not doing what. Oh, you know what? I know what the problem is. Okay. Hold on. I know what the problem is. Okay, there. All right. So that echo should be going away. Sorry about that. I apologize. I hadn't turned off my one of the camera mics, and that's why you were hearing the echo. So I think that should have solved it. And I thank you, those of you who are viewing. This is awesome to get this kind of feedback. It's a good thing. So I hope you heard all of that. Text me back if everything has been audible. You can actually hear it. I know it's annoying to have that kind of echo. All right. With that in mind, let's see. Perfect. Great. All right. I'm glad that we're on board. Okay. Sorry about that. So, what does my grant writer charge? She charges $2,500 on the initial consult, on the initial grant. So what that gets you is basically an initial consult and a first grant and one grant application. Every grant application from that point on is going to cost between $250 and $1,500, depending on the complexity of the grant application and how different it is from the first one. So the reason why you would hire a grant writer on a fee basis is because the fee, because you're hiring a professional. A professional grant writer is not going to submit grants for you that they don't think you're going to have a very good chance of winning. I have many clients that they want to apply for some grants, and I'll bring her in, and she won't charge me just to do a cursory eval, and she'll be able to tell, and she's told a couple of my clients that you're not a good candidate for any real grants. I mean, you could apply to some, but I don't think your chance of getting these grants is very high. Every grant, every client that I have used her for, every one of them without exception has resulted in grants being awarded. for far more than her fee has been. And so typically when we're applying to grants, we're looking at grants that are at least $100,000 and above. Her fee, $2,500. If we secure a $100,000 grant, obviously the $2,500 is money well spent. But in my experience, over the 13 years that I've worked with my grant writer, never once have we failed to secure a grant. And so that's the key. A professional makes all of the difference. You get what you pay for. Well, the fire department made the excuse, well, since we're not risking anything. And my point is this: you're talking about the Texas A&M Forest Service. So how exactly does the legislature fund the Forest Service? Well, every 2 years they put more money into it. And basically what happens is, if you qualify as a fire department, this is a state agency. These are taxpayer-funded grants. If you qualify, you can't be denied. See, that's the second thing that a grant writer does for you. Typically, you hire a grant writer because not only will they be able to identify granting agencies or foundations that can and will likely provide funding to you, but they will also help you to write a compelling, what's called a case for support. And so specifically, and let me just also add, because this is the big thing for her, and she's right, is that if most foundations that are giving $100,000 and above, most of them receive thousands of grant applications. They are looking for two things. First, they're looking to do one thing. They're looking to weed out as many of the applications as they can. The first way they do that is by identifying who did not follow directions on the grant application. That's the easiest way to get rid of them, and their staffs are trained to do exactly that. Look through them. They didn't fill in the application correctly or provide the information that was requested, they get rid of it. And that takes care of about half of all of the grants awarded. The next step is to identify which ones are really provide a compelling case for support. Why? Because in the case of foundations, the foundation board is really looking for the most bang for their buck. And because I work with Christ-centered ministries, they're looking for kind of what is going to have the greatest, what we call a kingdom impact. And it's like an ROI, return on investment, but what is going to do the most good if we give a grant to this ministry organization? And so a great grant writer is really good at creating a compelling case for support. If the if the foundation will allow it, they will provide images and pictures and ancillary information that will help push forward their application kind of to the top of the list. Now, with a state granting agencies like this one, there's no compelling case for support. You are either qualified, you either meet their criteria or you don't. If you meet their criteria, guess what? You go into the stack. You're at the bottom of the stack, but you're in the stack. And typically what happens is the Texas A&M Forest Service runs out of money. They do that typically every year. And so they don't grant, but for about a year, and then there's a year lag. Why? Because our state legislature meets every 2 years, doesn't meet every year. So they're out of funding. And so typically they'll say, I'm sorry, we just don't have any money. We'll see what the state legislature chooses to give, because every year the state legislature has to make a decision on how much they want to give to volunteer fire departments to help them in these needs. Well, the good thing about it is that if you applied last year for a grant, well, you get to you still have to reapply, but you get to keep your place in line. So the next year you're higher up on the stack, and so as they give grants away, which they do, and then eventually they run out of money. If you are right at the top of the list, guess what? Or the stack. Guess what? You don't get your grant for that year. They're out of money because they're the state agency. They're very tightly bound, and so then you have to reapply the next year. And again, you get to go to the top of the list now. You're at the top of the stack, so you're first, second, or third. And the likelihood that you're going to get that grant is very, very high if the state legislature funds. And so this is what happened. The McLendon Volunteer Fire Department provided or would applied for a $200,000 grant for a new fire truck, and I've got copies of the grant applications for those, and in this on this site, and so you see that they missed out, and so what basically the staff will do is they will communicate with the fire chiefs and whoever's the representative and say, hey, you're at the top of the stack, so make sure you apply next year or in 2 years, and so that's what happened here. They were at the top of the stack. They knew that they were going to get a grant, so they hired a grant writer, and you've seen the application. I've got in this post, I've got a copy of the actual application that was made and awarded. So you know what? Let me just show it to you so that you can see what I have here. Let me bring it up. So this is the grant application by a professional grant writer. Let me make sure that this is that's true. Yes, it is. So this is the professional grant writer. This is his professional professional work that he's put together, and he does it by hand. You will see in previous years how many of the grants requests were typed out by, I'm guessing, the fire chief or one of the volunteer firefighters. But this professional grant writer decides to put it all in writing. And so here's the case for support, supposedly $190,300. And what ends up happening, so there's his signature. Then they put this. So basically I put in one location all of the information so that you can see for yourself everything. So let's see. I include the actual check, I believe, on here as well. And so you can go through this for yourself and see all of this. There it is. Okay, so this is the field verification. So actually the reimbursement around the amount was $200,000 is what they ended up getting. In fact, I think I have it. There it is. $200,000 was awarded to the McLendon Volunteer Fire Department thanks to the grant writer. And guess what happened when that grant writer got that award? He was awarded $20,000 of that money. This is the fire chief's brother, for all of the hard work that he put in to doing this, to putting together this very exhaustive grant application. This is not the only grant that M.E. Jones wrote, but this is the biggest. This is one of those big ones this is the biggest one that he wrote, and many of the other grants that he wrote were for other kinds of equipment and for training. Now, here's what I don't know. And here, because an audit would show us, we know that M.E. Jones was paid. That's not a question. We know he was paid this $20,000 and that he was paid for other grants as well. What we don't know is that the grants that he was awarded, that he wrote with, or he signed the paperwork on, those grants for training, we don't know if since it is my understanding that those kinds of grants, they actually go to the training agency, like Texas A&M Firefighting Academy in College Station, Texas, or what I call the Holy Land. I believe the state granting agency sends the money directly to them, but because the contract establishes that if he wins a grant, he is paid 10% of whatever that grant is, it is my belief that he was paid that 10%. Here's the problem. Many of the grants awarded, not all, many of them, it is my understanding that many of those grants awarded for training, the person who was listed as the trainee never went and took that training. So essentially, the Texas A&M Forest Service got that money back and they awarded it to someone else. But the grant writer was still paid. Are you following me? So why do we need an audit? This is the problem with what was going on with the MCVFD. A lot of this information I got late, in some of it even after I was out of office. But the fact remains that this, to me, is outright fraud. This is not money that is designated. There was no need for a grant writer in these situations. They got this grant writer, so-called grant writer, got no other grants awarded to the MCVFD. This person's effort was futile, if there was any effort, and I do not believe there was any other effort. The effort to stop the city council from doing an audit it really precipitated all of the rest of the nonsense. And it's interesting because when I started asking questions in October, because we were going to have the fire chief and the treasurer come before the city council and answer questions, interestingly, the MCVFD decided to break their contract or end their contract with the so-called grant writer. I think it was in October, and I've got a link to it. Pretty interesting. My question is this: why didn't the Rockwall Herald Banner, because I let them know here's what I think is going on, why didn't they write any report about this? They made all sorts of reports about me and Wayne Orchard and the city council without any evidence. None. Why didn't they investigate this? The other question is, why hasn't law enforcement gotten involved? And so I'm hoping that this evidence, this has been posted on my website, on the Citizens for Representative Government website, which is my website since May 4th of 2018. I want to go through with you what happened, why we got where we got, and what happened as far as the MCVFD forcing our hands and forcing us to start our own fire department. I just want you to understand kind of the line by line, and this is another thing, something else that you can get at the Citizens for Representative Government website. And let me just show you what it is so you can kind of get a sense for how comprehensive the information is. So when you go and you look at this posting, comprehensive report on the MCVFD Forces Council's hand for all volunteer fire services, how we got here. I wrote this on December 12th, 2017. This provides you not just with documents, it provides videos, and I'm going to show some of these videos that I'm talking about here. It gives basically a line by line on what's going on, how decisions were made, why they were made, building a fire department for the city's future, how the fire department pulled the rug out from under us, and two game changers that made a huge difference in how we would negotiate with the McLendon Chisholm Volunteer Fire Department. So you can just see, again, this is a comprehensive post. Again, the difference between me and the others like the on the left is that I provide comprehensive information. And again, see, these are links. All of this, these are links so that you can go and you can see documents. You can go to and see what I'm talking about. There's videos. Are you getting a sense for the care that I take and have taken from day one to ensure that what I do and what I say is absolutely right for the people of McLendon Chisholm? I hope you do. I hope you're starting to get a better idea. Let me just start and give you kind of a rundown on the timeline and what happened when we had to basically make a decision. And the irony is you have, Donegan's group that's out there trying to create the misimpression that we didn't care about fire safety. The thing is, we cared very much about fire safety. We just didn't want to make it a political football. But Mike Donegan, Gary Moody, Mark Kipphut, these people had no problem playing politics. Mark Kipphut, the negotiator for the MCVFD, was playing bait and switch throughout the negotiations. So let me go through all of the facts as they actually occurred. The fire chief basically, when we met with the fire chief, and I'm going to show you a couple of videos that kind of show you, that interaction between the fire chief and the city council, and they're short videos, so don't get too concerned, but they'll give you an idea of what occurred. And basically, after that meeting where we met with the fire chief in September, the fire chief and he agreed. You'll see the video that he agreed to negotiate with the city. After that meeting, just 3 days, I think it was, he sent us 3 choices. And he basically said that he was not going to negotiate, and that we had 3 choices: to continue the current funding, to increase funding, to add Sunday 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. service for the station to be manned, or return to an all-volunteer fire service. And basically, it was a gun to the city's head. Councilmember Scott Turnbull stated for the last 3 years, the city council has had to deal with the MCVFD demanding their budget request to be funded under the less than subtle threat of the guys going away and leaving the city without a fire department. And Councilman Herron even said that that the 3 fire service options we were presented with felt like extortion, which is a really good characterization of what was really going on there. It was. Because the fire chief recognized that I was starting to ask some really hard questions, and I was asking questions that dealt directly with an audit. Now, it should be understood that the year before, when we voted to approve the fire department's increase in budget, 46% increase in their budget. This was after the tax rollback. Remember, you saw the knife-wielding man video. You know what I'm talking about. When we approved that budget, the fire chief, I said I would do it, but only if we can have an audit. We can audit the fire department going back 5 years. The city will pay for it. The fire chief then said, "Oh, no problem." Herman Larkin, "Oh, no problem. We don't have a problem with that." That is until it came time to an audit, and when the auditors called, they said, "No, thank you. We're going to do our own audit." Here's the other just outright lie. And I'm going to, I should show you the story that Channel 8 did. It's very enlightening. They interview me and they interview the chief, and I talk about the audit, and you hear the chief say, "Oh, we're doing our own audit. We're gonna audit our own books." They're gonna have their own CPA, and it's ironic. It was shocking, frankly. How many people in our community said, "Well, what's wrong with them auditing their own books?" I mean, these are a lot of the people that were arguing that I had always thought were reasonable people, used common sense, but I realized none of them had common sense. None of them were reasonable. Seriously, we're looking at an audit, and you're going to let them just do their own audit with their own CPA? Or they didn't even say they were going to use their own, a CPA. Maybe they did, but they never. I guess the bigger question is, where is it? Where's that audit? I know what they're going to say. Oh, wait a minute. Well, we were in negotiations. We just didn't have time to do the audit because we were in negotiation with the city. Dry that out and fertilize the lawn, right? The MCVFD basically was the only custodian of the fire department, so of the fire district. So they were responsible for the entire thing. You saw the knife wielding man video. You know the breakdown where you have a third of the fire district is in the city, 2/3 is outside of the city. And so here's one of the interesting things. Throughout this, when things got really hot, the fire chief stated that they were going to stop service to the city of McLendon Chisholm. Now I'm going to show you a clip here in a second. It's a 30-second clip. And what I was talking about here with the fire chief is, how do we get those who are in the unincorporated area to start contributing to their own fire safety? Because I can't understand why we continue to support them, to serve them, if they're not contributing to their own fire safety. And so Chief Jones took great exception with that. And so let me make sure that the sound is up on this, and let me put this. All right, so this is the video. Let's see if we can get the sound. Oh, it's buffering. Sorry about that. Well, I think what's happening is we're getting too much because of the broadcast. I'm going through. This is probably making it impossible for me to pull it up. So I'm probably not going to show these videos. Unfortunately, I'm going to have to find out a different way. But again, go to this post. I'll put a link to it on this video. But what you're going to hear the fire chief say is, there is no way. Our job is to serve the people of our fire district, and I'm not going to walk away from them. No, sir. Not going to do it. That's what he says. No, sir. Not going to do it. Not going to do it. Oh, but when it came to the city of McLendon Chisholm, and don't forget, the fire chief lived in the unincorporated area. There's no way he's going to stop serving his area. But when it came to the city of McLendon Chisholm, and we said, go with an all, well, okay, you gave us 3 choices. Okay, all volunteer. There you go. You're giving us an ultimatum. You won't do an audit. Okay, all volunteer. What did he do? We're going to stop serving the citizens of McLendon Chisholm. This man is not just a liar and a thief, he's a hypocrite. And I think that his actions speak loudly. We basically butted heads over a lot of that, and I told the city council gave Wayne Orchard, Scott Turnbull, and me the authority to try to negotiate with the fire department, and very early on, and I think it was before we even, well, I know it was before we ever met. I pulled myself out of it because I knew that my relationship with the fire chief was tenuous at best. I had a great deal of concern that he was not experienced, that he was not an experienced firefighter. Number one, he wasn't. He had never been a full-time firefighter in his life. His only experience as a firefighter was with the MCVFD, an organization that averages less than 1 call per day, that averages less than 1 structure fire per year. And his qualifications, lacking any certification as an officer at any level with either the TCFB or the SFFMA, yeah, he didn't like me challenging that. And this is what happens when you challenge someone who is hiding things. And so I'm really disappointed. But you look at these videos for yourself. The Royce City comparison. It's funny. I made a comparison of Royce City to McLendon Chisholm, and I posted a video of it. And former Mayor Mike Donegan, Father Donegan, put something on the Rockwall Herald banner. He made an op-ed to the Rockwall Herald banner accusing me of not knowing all of my facts. That just because the fire department for McLendon Chisholm and the fire department for Royce City, yeah, their budgets are equal. Well, actually not equal. The Royce City Fire Department, their funding was $388,300. Ours was $388,150. So they were $150 more. He highlighted some differences, like, for instance, they have a police department where the police officers work as volunteer fire departments as well. But he didn't want to talk about the fact that their population was over 12,500 people. Our population is 2,500. He didn't want to talk about the fact that our tax rate was 15.2 cents, and theirs is 67.71 cents at that time. That our total budget was let me just, well, you can actually see it. I'm not going to be able to play it, I don't think. I can try.
I will say I can answer with, there's a neighboring city in Rockwall County that has a paid chief and a paid inspector, no paid personnel at the station, and only one station, and their budget exceeds ours.
Okay. You mentioned earlier about a neighboring city that budget exceeds y'all's.
Yes.
Who is that?
Royce City.
Royce City?
Yes, sir. They are looking at, my understanding is they're looking at putting on a full-time paid fire department in the near future. But they recently hired, it's probably about a year ago, they hired an inspector, probably because of all the commercial development that they're going through. And they, of course, have had a full-time paid fire chief for as long as I know of.
What's their percentage of their budget to the city's budget?
I have no idea.
Well, there you go. This was what I was talking about. If you notice, we were asking real questions, and it was not me who brought up Royce City comparison. It was Fire Chief Robert Jones who brought that comparison up. And of course, Father O'Donegan didn't care to make that point, that I was simply going in and investigating what the chief was saying, if what the chief was saying was true. You just saw for yourself. So, I just want to see real quick if this other video will work, and it's not. Okay. All right. So let's move on. One of the things that's important is we basically we interviewed the fire chief and Herman Larkin, who is the treasurer at that time of the fire department, and they basically were showing us what's happening with the progression of the cost of the fire department. Now, everyone's really making hay about the idea that the cost of the fire department is significantly more than it was before. Well, we weren't paying benefits before. We have to pay benefits now. We're doing 24-hour service as opposed to 12-hour service per day. So obviously there's some differences there. But it's interesting, every time we ask the fire chief, well, what's the next thing? What do we have to do to become part of to bring in the MCVFD to make it part of the city? Well, he reminded us that there's a lot of things that are going to need to happen before they can come into the fire department, before they can come into the city. And one of them was to purchase a ladder truck. They needed a ladder truck for the fire department before they could come and become part of the city of McLendon-Chisholm. Now, it just so happens that my best friend, who lives across the street from me, we're in community together at church. He just so happens to be, he works for the Dallas Fire Department, and he just so happens to be a fire chief with the Dallas Fire Department. So a lot of the questions that I was asking Chief Jones were not stupid questions. These were questions that I don't know, someone with experience, someone who's qualified would ask. And the question is, why do you need a ladder truck? Ladder trucks are $1 million piece of equipment. But even more than that, you have to have specialized training to drive one. And in a lot of cases, these ladder trucks have somebody sitting in the back. So this is not a small little piece of little apparatus. Why do we need a fire? Why do we need a ladder truck? And then what was even more interesting is the new fire chief for the city of Rockwall, who came from the Dallas Fire Department, who my friend knows very well. When I approached them, I said, don't we have mutual aid? And he said, well, yes, we do. I said, well, what if we need a ladder truck? He goes, well, that's why we have ladder trucks. That's why you don't need one. He thought it was preposterous that we would need a ladder truck, because I actually proposed it as a mayor. I just basically said, hey, I'm thinking that we may need a ladder truck for our city. And the look on his face was one of complete and utter disbelief. He said, why do you need a ladder truck? I didn't tell him because our fire chief told us that we needed one. No, I just said, well, I just thought we would need one. And he laughed and he said, yeah, that's probably the last thing you need. So when I was looking and when we were considering a discussion about what we need to do as far as negotiations with the fire department, there were two game changers that made a negotiation with the MCVFD really necessary because of these two things. Game changer number one was the new contract with the Rockwall County EMS. Now, I, as mayor, was serving on the Emergency Services Corporation board. I was part of the negotiation in determining which ambulance service that we used. And the big issue for us was response time. The response time by the Rockwall County EMS had been abysmal. And most of us were saying we'd like to go with someone else because, and we had the MCVFD who could guarantee I believe a 9-minute and 30-second max response rate. Well, at the time, that was really great because 13 minutes was what the Rockwall County EMS was averaging. So even though the McLendon-Chisholm Volunteer Fire Department could only do basic first aid, it was better to have somebody on scene than nobody. But that all changed when we negotiated a new contract with the Rockwall County EMS, which basically made the response time much less. They were able to guarantee response time below the 9-minute mark, and that made and the McLendon-Chisholm Volunteer Fire Department states that the best they can do is 9 minutes 30 seconds. So the need for the MCVFD to respond to emergency EMS calls kind of went away, and that's kind of the theme of this if it will come up. And this one doesn't look like it's coming up either, but you can see for yourself that rescue EMS accounted for 53% of the calls that
when I run these reports, our software, Firehouse software, it breaks them down into slightly different categories. It groups rescue and
all right. So I think we're going to be we're going to have to move on from that. All right, so that's not, sorry about that. I'm going to have to figure something else out in the future. But so we basically have a failure by design in how this works, and so we didn't really need to have the MCVFD.
Slightly different categories. It groups rescue and EMS. So rescue could be if we did an extrication on a motor vehicle accident, it combines that in with EMS. But by a long shot, at 53%, rescue and EMS is what has made up this year's calls to date. Calls for general service at 13%. You know, that's typically going to be your calls for vehicle unlocks. Probably not that. You know, stranded motorists. You know, blocking traffic for a stranded motorist on the road that needs, you know, some lights behind them so they can change a flat tire. I don't.
All right, I'm not going to, but you get the gist of what we're doing. I'm not going to continue on that one if it's just, it keeps screwing up, the buffering keeps screwing up. So sorry about that. But it gives you an idea of what we're talking about. Even the fire chief acknowledges that over half their calls were EMS related. The other one is that the other game changer was that the Rockwall County Commissioners Court basically accommodated the fire chief's request to make the fire district one district, as opposed to two separate districts where the city was one district and the unincorporated area was the second. I asked the county commissioners to carefully consider that and asked them not to do that. The reason why is because being separate allows us the ability to basically create a requirement from those who are in the unincorporated area to have to pay something and contribute. So the county commissioners, they don't care about McLendon Chisholm. I can guarantee you that. They don't give a hoot about the people of McLendon Chisholm. We are such a small voting block. Dennis Bailey, I've already talked about his underhanded dealing in getting the emergency radio tower put up. If you watched the previous show, or the two shows ago, I think it was. I mean, this is, they don't care. So basically, what happened is, ironically, by doing it, it obligated the McLendon Chisholm Volunteer Fire Department to service the city, and the city didn't have to pay anything. Now, they wanted to create a perception that they could just walk away, but once they changed that, once they made themselves the focus that the entire fire district was going to be one, well, it obligated them to serve us. Now, of course, they didn't agree with that perspective, but that was certainly my perspective, and it was the perspective of our legal department, or our legal of our city attorney. So this is basically, I want to show you this slide here that I had created. Let's bring it up so you can see that when you look at the square miles, the number of homes and population, and then the funding, you get a real good sense as a citizen, as a taxpayer of McLendon Chisholm, of what was at stake. We made up 1/3 of the total fire district. We made McLendon Chisholm was 34% of the homes. Our population was 45% of the whole fire district, and yet we were paying 83% of the cost. And so, as a mayor, I thought that was ridiculous, and that needed to be changed. This is I do want to try to see if this will buffer, and what I'll do is I'll pause it once it starts so that it can continue buffering. That may be the key. Here we go. You can watch this.
Rockwall County Sheriff's Department to give me a dispatch report over the last 5 years from 2012 to 2017. So I got this data in August, so I stopped it at July. So it's basically, these are 12-month period. So you can, the orange bar is outside of the city, and the green bar is inside of the city. And this graph is basically other calls dispatched, and that includes assist, minor accidents, missing persons, animal complaint, deceased person, suicide attempt, vehicle unlock, welfare check, accident, hit and run, and disturbance. For 2016-17, 21 calls of those other inside the city, 13 outside of the city. When I go to traffic hazards, there's 2 inside the city for 2016-17 and 1 outside the city. Major accidents, 13 inside the city, 18 outside the city. These are major accidents. These are medical calls. There's well over half that go outside of the city than that are inside the city. Smoke investigation, there's more outside of our city limits than inside. Alarms, a lot more inside our city limits than outside. 19 compared to 8. And then when we get to fires, in 15-16, there's 15 inside, 53 outside, 16-17, 23 inside, 38 outside. The taxpayers of McLendon Chisholm are funding 90% of your budget last year, 10% by the county, not by citizens who live in these areas. And let's remember that those who are in your fire district that are outside of the city, they're not poor. These are nice houses. They contribute nothing. That county money comes from sales tax accumulated in the unincorporated areas of the county. And as Councilman Turnbull noted, the commissioners made it clear to me and Wayne and Scott, that money is probably going away. They're really kind of saying that they're looking at the emergency radio towers. It's probably better spent there. So the question that citizens have for me is, what is the fire department doing to raise money outside of our city limits? This is the beginning of contract negotiations. We set our budget, we set it so that in case we wanted to move forward with it, we had that budgeted already. And Chief, you made a good point. These things take time. You don't just rush into that decision about handing over, assets, all that stuff. I get it. It's great because we got time. Your fiscal year doesn't start until January. We have time to negotiate all of this. What I'm trying to do is I'm trying to figure out what we can do cooperatively to come up with a solution so that those who are in the county can start contributing. Because I believe, we met a few of them. I believe that they
think what I say
don't want to just take, that they do want to participate.
Yeah, so this is basically what we approached, or what I addressed with the fire chief. And like I said, that meeting ended, and 2 or 3 days later he said, "We're not negotiating. You pay up or else." And when I was first on city council, we met with the fire chief and Herman Larkin. And because I'm a professional fundraiser, one of the things that I did was offer $10,000 of my own money to help set up the fire department with a fundraising strategy and plan. I would pay for it so that it could move forward. Their response was, "Well, we'll take your money, but you don't expect us to participate, do you?" And I said, "Well, yeah, you would need to be part of this." He said, "Well, I'm sorry, but we're too busy." They're too busy. A fire department that averages less than 1 call per day, a fire department that averages less than 1 structure fire per year, but they're busy, what he said, training over and over again. Now, I think this is a good thing to show, asking when I asked him about raising funds.
Now, us as a fire department, we're a private entity. We can go and ask for donations. I have zero way that I know of to force people to pay us money. We used to do fundraising. That's been cut off because the city became a non-solicitation city.
Okay, let's stop there just a second because that's absolutely not true. The city became, we passed an ordinance that required solicitors, people who are trying to make to raise money or to make for-profit money, going door-to-door sales, they had to get a permit. The ordinance is specific that when it comes to fundraising for not-for-profit organizations, they are exempt. So the fire chief, again, plays politics and plays with the truth, which just is not true, which is simply not true.
The picture fundraiser that we used to do every year, they won't come to us because all that's left is the small county areas that they can go to that don't have enough population to justify them coming in and spending time on it. So,
yeah, the picture fundraiser, that's where someone came by your house and they said, "Hey, would you like to give to your fire department, support them? And for every gift of $10 or more, you'll get a free 8x10 sitting and a free 8x10 for you and your family." And countless people told me that absolutely, they signed up. $10, sure, I can give that. But what they didn't say, what they weren't telling you, is that the first $10 goes to this photography company. And so many people gave $10 thinking they were giving to the fire department. They gave nothing. They gave, and 90% of the people, probably 99% of the people, never went to that sitting, a photography sitting. Who does that? Who pays for that anymore? Nobody. But this was their fundraiser. This is their idea of fundraising. I can't force anyone to give. Well, last year I offered $10,000 to set up a fundraising program that works with other cities, and it works really well. How do I know? Well, because I'm in the business, and I've gotten some advice from some pretty smart people who have done things like that. But no, the fire chief can't do that. Excuses.
Quite honestly, we're busy enough being a fire department to go out and do fundraisers we can't budget on fundraising.
Yeah, you can't do what 77%, what at least 75% of all volunteer fire departments do. Actually, 90%, I believe, is the figure. 90% of all volunteer fire departments raise money. That's how they're funded. And we're in a community that, with a fire district like we're in, and I'm telling you, there was a great opportunity for us to raise money from the unincorporated area and by the way, the idea that those who were that you couldn't raise money inside the city, again, it was focused on the fact that the fire chief created the misimpression, the false presentation that they couldn't fundraise inside the city of McLendon Chisholm. But what's more important is, why would you? Why wouldn't you be focused on fundraising in the unincorporated area? That's the point. That's what I was trying to get you to do. But he doesn't want to do that because, after all, that's his neighbors. Isn't that funny? Listen to that again. If you go back and watch that, we can't force people to give. Really? You forced the city. You forced the county. You said, if you don't pay up, we're gonna walk away. You didn't have any problem with that. That's what's so awful about this. I want to show this video. This is the one. This is where I asked him to bill those who are in the unincorporated area for service, because we got to find a solution. Does he have a problem with that? Does he have a problem billing those who are in the unincorporated area? Because some people, actually, a lot of the people who were
I'm talking about when the annual.
A lot of the people who were part of his group out there in the unincorporated area, and all the leftists, the Mark Kipputs, the Mike Donegans, they came out with, the mayor wants to charge people whose houses have just burned down, and wants to charge them for the services of fire department. That is un-American. One person posted that it's un-American. Really? Well, then why don't you tell the ambulance service if you get life flighted somewhere, care flighted, wherever, guess what? When you get out of the hospital, whether you're alive or dead, when you get out of the hospital, guess what you're going to receive in the mail? You're going to receive a bill for $20,000 minimum for a helicopter ride to the hospital. Is that un-American? No, it's not un-American. This is all politics. This is what these people do. They play politics with public safety because they don't want to have to be accountable to anyone for any reason. Watch this.
Service bills someone for carrying them to the hospital, like I was the last year and a half ago or whatever. I got a bill. Sure. My insurance company didn't. So why can't you do that?
Why can't we?
Well, I'm in the process of.
I'm talking to the people who are in the outside of the city. Sure. Why can't you guys do that?
Sure. There's nothing stopping us. I mean, outside of the administrative side of it, and what are the legalities?
Sounds like he likes this idea. Doesn't have a problem with this idea. Of course, when he leaves the room, he has a real problem with this idea, and he tells everyone, "Wait a minute, we can't do that. That's un-American. We can't do that."
You have a private company billing and anything like that. I don't.
Mr. Pascal,
I don't know.
All right, so buffering is going slow. I'm not gonna do the entire video, but please watch it. Again, I think it's a very insightful point. The other question is that was the fire chief TCFP certified? Was he certified by the Texas Commission on Fire Protection? That's an important question because all of the men that were in the MCVFD, McLendon Volunteer Fire Department, they had to be TCFP certified. Well, I don't know why. I don't know if they had to be, but they were. So they got the grants to get trained, and Chief Robert Jones got several grants. You'll see that if you pull open these documents. You'll see all the grants that Robert Jones received to get trained so that he could become TCFP certified, so that he could get officer certification through the SFFMA, TCFP being the only regulatory agency in the state of Texas, by the way. But the SFFMA, if he wanted to go that route, he could have done that. And I've got links, and actually you can actually see what I'm talking about, so that you can understand. So these are the links to TCFP, their online database where you won't find Chief Jones anywhere in that. These are the certifications that we verified with that he was certified as, but you'll notice that he's not TCFP certified. He doesn't even have the basic level of TCFP certification. Why is that important? Well, it's important because if the city wanted to take over the fire department, the fire chief has to be TCFP certified. He's not. There's a problem there. So he can't be fire chief. Is there maybe another reason why he didn't want to work with us?
Your members are TCFP certified?
He's asking how many members of the MCVFD are TCFP certified. That's Scott Turnbull asking the question.
I'm thinking 6.
I think 6 right now, and 3 of them are yet to take their tests. That they've completed their certifications, they just have to take the test.
Okay. And if they're not TCFP certified, they have to be certified by
the State Fire Marshals Association.
SFMFF.
SFFMA.
Okay. How many of you are certified that way?
All of the active members are certified. What we do is
not Robert Jones.
Probationary members. You're a probationary member for 1 year, and that.
I'm guessing Robert Jones is a probationary member based upon what he's telling us here. If if what he's saying is true, which is not true.
1 year, you have a chance to complete your certification through the State Fire Marshals Association or attend a fire.
This buffering is killing me. So what you'll see, and again, I urge you, I beg of you, look at the evidence of fact. You will hear Herman Larkin, the treasurer of the McLendon Chisholm Volunteer Fire Department, say that he, Herman Larkin, is the only member of the MCVFD, not a full-time, non-probationary member, not to be TCFP certified. And so all of this information, all of the things that we had to go through, they refused to sit down and negotiate terms in favor of take it or leave it ultimatum. And they basically said to sign the MCVFD proposed contract, despite the fact that over half of the services that the MCVFD has provided are EMS related, and the fact that 2 months ago, 2 months before that, Rockwall County EMS now guarantees a far better response time than the MCVFD can. They say stay with the current contract. They don't care. They want EMS. They want to be able to do the emergency medical calls. They don't see they don't see a need for any change. Even though the expressed purpose of funding the MCVFD was to provide equipment and manpower that would become city-owned after 6 years, was ripped away from citizens, they say keep funding them. While my offer of time, talent, and treasure to help the MCVFD raise funds was rebuffed, they said let the taxpayers keep footing the bill. When the MCVFD rejected my proposal without even seeing it, and I put together a proposal for them. This was after they gave us the ultimatum. I gave them a proposal, and before they even saw it, that calls for billing those in the unincorporated area. That was what I was asking for in the fire district who receive service, just like the Rockwall County EMS does. They said they called it heartless and even un-American. Now that the city has been removed from any perceived obligation as a good neighbor to the unincorporated area, they say keep obligating city taxpayers to support those who contribute nothing for their fire service protection. As other cities 6 times the size of ours continue to have high-performing all-volunteer fire departments, yes, Royce City is all-volunteer. Yes, their police officers are part of the volunteer department. But they said keep paying them their for their full-time firefighters. In the face of the overwhelming evidence that no time and attention was paid to ensure that the decision to jump headfirst in a monumental funding increase was the right path to take, they said, "How dare you question our decisions and don't monkey with our contracts?" This is what we were faced with, and we could either succumb to the tyranny, a tyrant, Robert Jones. Had absolute authority over the MCVFD, or we could do what was in the best interest of the citizens of McLendon Chisholm, and that is create our own fire department. The thing that I hope that will happen, and I'll tell you, my biggest fear, and again, I was not in favor of the way that the fire department was created, where the fire department is, where you have full-time firefighters. And again, this was a demand by the MCVFD, if they were going to transfer over after I left office, that you hire the men who are currently on staff. I think that is the acme of foolishness. It's not that I'm opposed to firefighters. My best friend's a fire chief in the Dallas Fire Department. That would be a stupid argument to make. The issue is that we have 3,000 people population in the city of McLendon Chisholm. That's our focus. That should be the focus of the mayor or the city council, the citizens of McLendon Chisholm, not the citizens of the unincorporated area of the fire district. But that's what we're focused on. That's what they're focused on. I think it's a dangerous thing to have allowed the firefighters to not have demanded. And when I met with the fire chief, I said I showed him my plan that was in my State of the City address. Again, I'll put another link to it. If you haven't read it, you can see for yourself. My focus was I wanted to get a fire chief who was passionate about training and passionate about equipping, and that we bring in because firefighters in Dallas and everywhere, every city around us, they work 1 day on and 2 days off. And most of those firefighters have other jobs when they're not working. They do other things. They would jump at the opportunity if they could get paid what we're paying the current firefighters, the hourly rate. They jump at the chance to be a part of that. And the great thing is the city wouldn't have to pay their benefits. And the city would get a qualified firefighter, highly qualified firefighter. I mean, think about it. A firefighter with the Dallas Fire Department who's been on the job for 1 year has more experience, more real-world experience than Robert Jones and Herman Larkin combined in their entire careers. And that's what we could have gotten, and that's what we should have fought for, and I wish we would have. It's not too late. The problem is, as this grant starts going away and we, the taxpayers, have to start footing the bill, decisions are going to have to be made. Are you electing people who are going to make the hard decisions, who are going to say, you know what, we need to go with experienced firefighters who are willing to do it on their days off and be part of the McLendon Volunteer Fire Department on their days off, or excuse me, the McLendon Fire Rescue Department on their days off. That's what I think. I think it's very dangerous because the problem is, once it's just like with any other government agency, when you start funding something, you try to take that money back. I mean, everyone's going to come out from the rafters and oppose this. So you oppose the fire department? No. But I'm trying to give you a sense of how conservatives view things. Look, facts don't care about feelings. But far too many people think that their feelings are the most important things. I'm really hoping that you take this to heart and you've listened to the facts, that you'll go to the Citizens for Representative Government website. I'll put a link to that site, and you can see some of these things for yourself, some of the data and some of the videos for yourself on a vehicle that buffers better. But tomorrow I'm probably going to deal with the 4,000